Podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and today we are looking at one big story. I've got to figure out if I remember how to do this. All right, like real time, it's been a while since I have recorded. Things have changed in my life. Working from home now, I'm a stay-at-home dad, and doing all the things that stay-at-home moms do, but with a wiener instead, basically, is kind of a lot of it. It's a lot of it. It's probably not 100% of it just because of biology, but it's a lot of it. You know, taking babies to preschool and picking them up and keeping diapers changed and cooking dinners. And then also, here's the thing. All right, it's crazy how much more you can get done when you're not sitting in traffic for like an hour and a half to 2 hours every day. All right, because that's what it is. All right, I live near Charlotte, big city, not the infrastructure that was prepared for it. And so, you know, commuting into an office every day, easy 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes more than that. All right. Both ways, going home too. And so just having that extra time, I've been able to do so much. I can work out now. I'm not so physically and mentally drained coming home every day. You know, it's been fantastic. I've lost some weight. And my mental health is fantastic. All right. I just like, I'm counting calories and I don't want to kill myself, right? Like it's crazy how just like having the extra capacity to just do like two small things, to count calories, right? And just, you know, have some protein shakes, make sure you're not just ravenously, homicidally hungry all the time. And then a little 30-minute workout, little bike ride, maybe a little walkie walk, and oh my goodness, how easy is it to then just start losing like 3 pounds a week, which is what I've been doing. And that's an insane, unsustainable pace. But also, I was gigantic, all right? I was gross. My wife is like, I'm attracted to larger guys. No, shut up. You're not. Not that. All right? You don't have to be nice about it. I get it. Still am gross. And I'm working on it, and it's great because I feel like I can finally take some time for myself, and it's great. And like, I'm excited. I'm actually optimistic, even though the world around us is still a massive dumpster fire. I have optimism for my own personal trajectory. And that's a weird place to be when you haven't been there in several years. But now it is. And so that's a little peeksy behind the curtain there. So let's get into this episode. I've been doing this for a while now. I have not recorded an episode, I don't think, since before Christmas. All right. That's how far ahead I got. I mean, this is March 30th when this episode comes out. I'm going to be very rusty, but that's okay because we're going to do the things oh man, it's just been great. All right. Today we are talking about one guy, Wilbur Voliva, and the Christian Catholic Apostolic Church. It's going to be fun. So strap in.
Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time.
Wilbur Glenn Voliva was born on March 10th, 1870 in Indiana, where he had a seemingly uneventful childhood. So we're not going to worry about him for a second, and I'm going to instead introduce you to the person who would give Voliva the reason for him being the subject of today's episode. So we're going to go back a little bit farther, 33 years, to John Alexander Dowie, who was born on May 25th, 1847 in Edinburgh, Scotland. At age 13, Dowie and his family then moved to Adelaide, Australia, where he began working various jobs, and he joined the Total Abstinence Society, where his father was president. His father wasn't pregnant. That would be weird. But age 13, joining the Total Abstinence Society. Okay, dork. After returning to Edinburgh to study theology, Dowie went back to Australia and developed a following as a faith healer in Melbourne. When James Albert Abbott claimed that Dowie instantly healed him of several life-threatening ailments, Dowie's fame skyrocketed all over Australia. Like, this dude was huge in Australia. So by 1888, Dowie had then moved his family to the United States to start a church in California, but it quickly failed, mostly because he only offered to heal people who tithed to the church, because that's what Jesus would do. Jesus out there paying admission to see and experience his miracles, as we all know. In 1892, Dowie then moved from California to Chicago for the World's Fair, where he thought he would have a plethora of people to convert to his new church. When he realized, though, that a booth inside the fair would be too expensive because he didn't want to pay, he's all about getting paid. He's not trying to pay he's not trying to spend money to make money. He's just trying to make money. So booth inside the World's Fair, too expensive. So instead, he built his own table outside of the fairgrounds where he staged divine healings using people that he would plant in the audience, because that's what Jesus did, you guys. Look, Dowie, he knows what he's doing. All right. He studied theology in Scotland, in Edinburgh. I don't know what big old university is in Edinburgh, Scotland, probably one of them. And he learned theology, and he learned all of the things that Jesus did. So he clearly learned that Jesus, when he was performing his miracles, they were audience plants. All right, he planted them out there. The kid with the loaves and the fishes, he just found a kid, and he was like, "Hey, man, I've got just a liquidation purchase. I got this giant pallet of stale bread and fish. All right. And I just need you to show up with a basket and then just kind of go around back every few minutes and keep filling the basket. And people are going to be like, oh man, Jesus kept turning and blah, 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 the other one, what else? The blind guy that he healed, not blind at all. All right. A lot of people don't know this. Planted. It was Jesus's friend, Greg. And he's like, hey, Greg, I just need you to hang out here by the gates of the city and just act like a blind person, walk into walls and stuff, I guess. I don't know. And then I'm going to come by, I'm going to like tickle your eyelashes, and then you're going to be like, oh, I can see. Thank you, Jesus. It's going to be great. All right. People are going to follow me. They're going to love me. And there's going to be a whole religion after me. That's how it went down. All right. I know a lot of people don't know that, but I'm here to set the record straight. So, when he wasn't faking these miracles, he was also then preaching against the carnal, evil, secular World's Fair that was taking place behind him, mostly probably just because he was still butthurt that he couldn't afford to have a booth inside the fair. So obviously it's evil. When Dowie wasn't preaching, he was claiming to heal every disease and ailment known to man at the time for an astronomical fee. He would then use the money that he made from tithes from his followers to buy securities in bankrupt companies that he would then sell to the congregation. So basically, he would just take these securities from these failing companies, flip them for a profit to his congregation, and then when the companies went bankrupt, the securities would become worthless. So now his followers are like double out of their money, right? Thanks to some additional wealthy donors, Dowie somehow quickly developed thousands of followers in the Chicago area and was making ungodly amounts of money, which then allowed him to buy 10 square miles of land northwest of Chicago, which he named Zion, and then established the Christian Catholic Apostolic Church. Now, after incorporating the town of Zion, this dude literally is just building a cult town near Chicago. Dowie moved his roughly 6,000 followers to the new city and claimed that the town would be run as an absolute theocracy, i.e. ruled by God, but with Dowie as kind of like this priest king. Whatever. He outlawed smoking, drinking, eating pork, whistling, wearing tan shoes, and the practice of any kind of medicine that wasn't prayer. Oh, God. This is the 1900s or late 1800s, early 1900s. All right. It's not that long ago. All right. Now, look, I get outlawing smoking, drinking. I even get outlawing eating pork because that's like an Old Testament kosher thing for the Jews. If you're going to take it super literally, I respect it. Where I kind of fall off the wagon is the whistling. Did he just hate whistling? Or was he like jealous that like he himself couldn't whistle, so just no one could do it? I think that's what it was. Also just outlawing any kind of medicine that wasn't prayer. If God's not going to fix it, then you're just going to die. He established flat earth as the city's official scientific doctrine. Of course he did. He also established a wide range of businesses, including healing homes and actually a successful candy factory. He also founded Zion Bank and required all residents to open an account at the bank and deposit all of their funds. And people were just like, yeah, that seems totally reasonable. You know, this dude who just owned a bank, that would be like Trump opening a Trump bank and then making everyone have an account. It's like we came close with like the Trump accounts for babies, but like you could still volunteer to do that. Like, but no, this dude was like, hey, you're going to come live in my city. You're going to have an account at our bank that I own where I see all the money. Oh, convenient. In 1903, Dowie decided that he needed to bring other parts of the United States under his control and sent 8 chartered trains equipped with his state-of-the-art luxury carriage and 3,000 of his closest followers to New York. This is where he was going to go first. That's where he was going to go build his next little cult city. Once everyone was in New York City, he actually booked Madison Square Garden for 2 weeks of sermons and then sent followers all over the city to try to recruit people to attend. It did not go well. The church's followers were yelled at and given all sorts of obscene gestures wherever they went because New Yorkers. Dowie's sermons, which still went on inside Madison Square Garden, they were sparsely attended to begin with, but they were conducted among a constant stream of boos while angry attendees threw coins on the stage, not as a donation, but in an attempt to actually injure him. I love that. In the end, Dowie and his followers ran back to Zion in failure, which began raising doubts that this entire operation was really part of God's divine plan, despite everything that Dowie was saying. Obviously, he's a cult leader. He's a grifter. Even worse, the $300,000 that Dowie had spent on the trip to New York had left all of Zion on the brink of bankruptcy because, again, he took all of the money that people deposited into his bank, spent it on this trip to New York, and then it's a complete failure. They didn't get a bunch of new followers like he thought he would. And so now the town is almost out of money. So at that point, Dowie turned to Wilbur Glenn Voliva to fix everything. So now we're back. All right. We're back to Wilbur. Voliva had been a member of Zion since 1898 and had loyally followed Dowie everywhere he went. Dowie had also made Voliva an elder in the church and had appointed him to rule Zion's original Australian branch back in Melbourne. So all of this stuff with New York goes down. Everything's kind of falling apart. So he summons Voliva back to the United States in 1903. And within a matter of months, Voliva had actually solved all of Zion's financial problems. And because of that, Dowie gave him the power of attorney over the entire cult, essentially. It was over the entire town, but it was a cult at this point. Soon after, Voliva then began crafting a plan to dispose of Dowie and rule Zion for himself. And as he should, right? Like, Dowie is a dingling. He ran the town into the ground, spent all the money, very irresponsible. Voliva comes in, fixes everything. And so, of course, he thinks, like, yeah, I'm probably the actual real priest, king, god guy. So we got to figure out how to get rid of Dowie. Well, in September of 1905, Dowie suffered a stroke and then traveled to Jamaica to recuperate. While there, he claimed $2,000 per month in expenses and asked Voliva to rule over Zion in his absence, which is crazy that you're going to spend $2,000 a month in 1905. Voliva, with Dowie out in Jamaica, he took that opportunity to then finally make it public and claim that Dowie was stealing church cult resources and practicing polygamy, which was probably something he banned, and called for Dowie's official removal. Residents/members of Zion then voted Voliva as the new quote-unquote general overseer of the city church cult thing. And then Dowie, he's gone. Like, he died in exile 2 years later. So, with Voliva now fully in charge of this cult city, he turned Zion Industries, which was this collection of businesses and factories that Dowie had set up, turned them into a regional powerhouse. They manufactured Scottish lace. The candy company's Fig Bar and White Dove chocolates became extremely popular all over the area. However, the early years of Voliva's rule were full of challengers to his throne. In 1909, Voliva was actually defeated in an election, but he refused to recognize the results and declared that the election had been rigged. Oh, that sounds familiar. Voliva then, after this election, summoned as many of his supporters as he could to City Hall and barricaded himself on the second floor while his political opponents occupied the first floor, both of which claimed to be running the city. Over the next several weeks, both sides even staged raids against each other on the lone stairwell inside the city hall, while the newly elected police chief staged his own raids on the police station where the ousted police chief was threatening to shoot anyone who got close to the building. Honestly, that could happen again. You know, like, I can see this next election, like Trump losing, which, I mean, obviously he will. He can't run again. But, like, you know, whoever his little puppet is that he gets, right? And then him, like, refusing to recognize the election, saying it's been rigged again. And then him just refusing to leave the White House. Like, I can see that happening. And then little Petey in the Pentagon, setting up camp and just threatening to shoot any new, political elected officials who try to show up. Like, I can see all of that happening, and it's crazy how it's all happened before. Here's the problem, though, at least in this instance. Because Voliva himself had purchased nearly all of Zion's assets during the bankruptcy auction that he himself had set up following Dowie's failed trip to New York, Voliva was essentially the legal owner of the entire town. So he could kind of technically do whatever he wanted, regardless of whatever kind of democratic process played out. Even more, when 3 of his rivals were deposed after they broke an elderly woman's arms and legs during a faith healing service, Voliva was able to fully reassert himself as the business and spiritual leader of Zion. Basically, like, all of these people are idiots, right? It's not like there's logical, reasonable people running against Voliva to become the new leader of Zion. They're just as crazy as he is. And they all think that they are divine healers and called by God. And so, like, while Voliva's got himself barricaded up, these newly elected leaders, they're out running their own faith healing services, and they're just breaking arms and legs of old people, trying to heal them. And it's not going to work. So then all the rest of the citizens of Zion, they see this and they're like, all right, well, I mean, I guess we'll just go back to Wilbur. He's like the least bad of the people. Anyway, in 1910, now, Voliva began trying to make sure everyone believed that the earth was flat. Why they were so keyed in on this, I don't know. But like for the last decade, right, this town, aside from all of the other archaic stuff that they believed, were really pushing flat earth theory. And so in accordance with Dowie's original doctrine, flat earth theory was taught in Zion school as the primary view of the earth. They taught that the North Pole was the center of an otherwise flat disk and that a huge wall of ice surrounded the outer edge, the famous ice wall. Oh, God. According to Voliva, also, hell was basically a slightly larger disk beneath Earth that the ice wall prevented people from falling into. How come the fires of hell never actually melt the ice wall? I don't know. Maybe it's kind of how igloos work, where you can have a fire set up inside of the igloo and the ice doesn't melt for somehow. I don't know. I don't understand any of it. Anyway, but in addition, he also taught that below the first hell, there was another hell that was inhabited by the souls of the people who lived on earth before Adam. He did not explain how the fire from either hell didn't melt the ice wall. He also didn't really explain where the other pre-Adam people came from. And that's a new thing entirely, kind of like at that point, he's like trying to marry, the biblical creation story with, I don't know, common sense, right? Because like there's mentions, if you read on in Genesis, like when Cain gets exiled for killing Abel, he goes and lives with this other group of people. Who were these other people? We don't know. Like the Bible didn't really seem to indicate that they were also, sons of Adam and Eve. They're just this other group of people, right? So like I think he's trying to like account for that there, which pretty smart on his part to not, have any holes in a doctrine that's so full of holes. But it wasn't a great explanation. Aside from this, Voliva also used Zion's printing press and radio station, which was so powerful that it actually reached all the way to Central America, to produce all kinds of flat earth propaganda, mostly because no one apparently had any idea how gravity and physics worked in that general area. He also believed that the sun was only 32 miles in diameter and no more than 3,000 miles from Earth. And when people were like, hey, Wilbur, how do you know this? He would say, quote, "It stands to reason, it must be so." Like basically, in other words, because I said so, trust me, bro. Like that's it. That was his whole, proof of why he believed what he believed. In addition to all of this, Voliva had a standing offer of $5,000 to anyone who could prove that the earth was round. So, weirdly enough, no one ever tried to take him up on that. And so like he just continued on with, and maybe a lot of people knew how crazy this dude was. And so even if you presented him with actual proof and reason, he wouldn't acknowledge it. And so it just wasn't worth trying. In addition to the flat earth philosophy, Voliva enacted more ridiculous laws that were enforced by the Zion Guards. And it was kind of like this paramilitary force that patrolled the city and enforced all of these ridiculous laws. For example, husbands and wives were not allowed to bathe within 50 feet of each other. Okay. There was no standing outside with more than one person and no newspaper reading on Sundays. Okay. When he wasn't talking about flat earth, he was actively railing against the, quote, trinity of evils, which were modern astronomy, which would prove that the earth was round, but okay, evolution and higher criticism. And that's the real dangerous one. All right. Like, look, you can not believe in astronomy all you want. Like, that's fine. That's not really going to, that doesn't really change the trajectory of how things on Earth will go, but to call higher criticism evil, which was, critical thinking as it relates to ancient texts to understand cultural and historical context for why they were originally written, that's not cool. All right. And because like That's how you get all these people who are like, well, the Bible says this. Yeah, but that's because it was written for a very specific group of people for a very specific reason. It wasn't meant to be universally applied to people. Also, if you're going to have this hardline position on it, why don't you believe that for the rest of the Old Testament? Like and so it's very, 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 very thin ice to walk on. Voliva also called for strict literal interpretations of the Bible and even traveled to Dayton, Tennessee to be a witness in the Scopes trial on evolution, even though no one asked him to be there. The Scopes trial, if you remember, was, I think, about a teacher who wanted to teach evolution in schools. And then Tennessee was like, no, that's the devil. We're going to teach that Jesus did it, or whatever. Voliva also predicted that the world would end in 1923, 1927, 1930, 1934, and 1935. Never did, obviously. He was probably feeling really good about himself when the Depression was happening. That was like, oh, we're getting close. But then it never did. By 1927, Voliva had amassed a $5 million fortune, which actually bothered the residents of Zion because they were working substandard wages and were still being forced to use Zion Bank, which obviously Voliva owned. So essentially, like, in an indirect way, like, people are working these jobs mostly at companies owned by Voliva. They were making substandard wages, which were then being deposited into a bank owned by Voliva. When the Great Depression came, though, the candy factory, which was kind of like their most popular and most successful thing, that went bankrupt or closed down. Zion Industries as a whole went bankrupt. And Voliva responded to all of this by going out and trying to sail along the flat earth ice wall, which he failed to do, obviously, because it's not a thing that exists. And I don't know what, God, I'm just so obsessed with the ice wall. When he returned to Zion, not having found the ice wall, he tried to resurrect the town's finances by creating the Zion Passion Play, which did nothing but make the residents angrier. And like the Zion, so like, you know how like towns have like these dramas, like Roanoke has the Lost Colony drama, Cherokee, in the mountains of North Carolina has one. A couple of towns elsewhere do. He's like, no, we're going to have a town play. It's going to be about the passion of the Christ. And then people were just like, no, we just want to have jobs and work. We don't want to be in a play. Finally, in 1937, an angry resident set the radio station and the church where the play was performed on fire, which then ended up forcing Voliva into personal bankruptcy. Zion Industries and the town in general was then taken over by creditors, which forced Voliva to place a sticker of a globe on his car to show that he had paid the proper taxes. Following the bankruptcy, Voliva fled to Florida, where he tried to start a new cult/colony, but he was soon diagnosed with terminal cancer, even though he claimed that his diet of Brazil nuts and buttermilk would help him live to 120. He made it to 72, where he died on October 11th, 1942. Dude is insane. After Voliva's death, Zion as a church and a cult practically dissolved. Today, a small group of followers remained under the newly organized Christ Community Church. But today, the town of Zion still exists. It's a bustling suburb of Chicago, but there are very, very few references to the cult that started it.
All done.
There you go. Wilbur Voliva and the Christian Catholic Apostolic Church. I don't really know what parts of it were Catholic, but yeah, anyway, like them, I think like them and the Oneida cult, very similar because John Humphrey Noyes, the Oneida cult, like they built their own town, had very successful industries. I think Oneida, with the sex force field, much crazier, but also like just their industry and everything was just so much more successful. Whereas like here, Voliva, crazy, built a pretty decently successful town, but just their industry, like their candy company, was the most popular thing they had. And even then, like, it wasn't like a nationwide thing. I think it was mostly regional. But other than that, let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number one, John Alexander Dowie founded the Christian Catholic Apostolic Church in Australia. It was huge there. And then he brought it to America, not as receptive to it, but still was able to get several thousand followers and was able to found the town of Zion, Illinois. Number two, Wilbur Glenn Voliva, relatively uneventful childhood and everything, but then ends up kind of crossing paths with Dowie, joins the cult, and becomes like a financial mastermind and rises through the ranks, ultimately ends up saving the town from bankruptcy after Dowie went crazy and became the cult leader / dictator. Number three, flat earth, for some reason, a very big deal to these people. Like, one of those things where like just became such a huge distraction for them and a point of emphasis for them that I think it actually kind of hindered their ability to be bigger than they were. They were so insistent that the earth was flat. And then, I mean, even Voliva himself went out on a ship and tried to find the majestic mythical ice wall and never did, because flat earth isn't real. And if you or someone you love thinks that the earth is flat, it's not. All right. If you think the earth is flat, I want you to just stop what you're doing right now and smack yourself in the face as hard as you can. All right. And maybe that'll be your wake up call to read a book and have some critical thinking skills. All right. If you know someone who believes the earth is flat, probably just don't associate with them. Those kinds of people don't deserve friendship and love, right? That's just, oh God. Anyway, all right, I'm done.
What did we learn?
Next week on Our Weird World, we are into the month of April, so it is Weird Fun Bag number 29. We are looking at Atlas Fredonier, the Cardiff Giant, and Emma Crawford. 3 silly stories for very, very different reasons, and we will jump into those next week. So thank you so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends about the show. Keep it weird.
This is a podcast